I'm Matt Miller.
And I'm Hannah Elliott, and this is Hot Pursuit.
All right, today we have a special edition or a special episode for you because Hannah has brought a guest into the studio. So it's really our first LA guest, right? We've had guests out in New York City.
Inaugural. The best for first. This is what I like to say.
Try not to speak. I'm waiting for my
Well, I wonder if we did it. I wonder if we did it without introducing you, if a lot of people would recognize you just by your voice, because you are kind of famous for your voice.
In a world where one woman joins us for Hot Pursuit.
I love
Lake
it.
Bell, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes.
Lake Bell.
I love that movie, by the way. And
Thank
you just came out with an audiobook, right, last year?
Yes.
As
Inside
well.
Voice. Yes.
So how do you know Hannah?
I know Hannah because I think that there are only, just kind of like a handful of women that I follow in the automotive journalist sector, as it were. And I kind of also was a fan of Magnus's, her teammate in life. Between the two of them, I think I just was a fan from afar. And then Hannah and I kind of had this interesting connection with her life story, incidentally. That's where we really, our friendship went to the next level because I wrote a pilot about her life, basically.
Yes. The thing about Lake that I think maybe people don't know if you've seen her on the cover of any magazine or, or are familiar with her acting is Lake's actually an extremely talented writer. And obviously producing, directing, we know that about Lake. But actually Lake does a ton of writing, and she's extremely talented. Also had a car column for the Hollywood Reporter.
The hot tip.
Yeah.
I think the thing also that people don't know is that my family's in motorsport. My father, I grew up.
True.
Yeah, in motorsport. Some people in that industry are like, that chick grew up around that. But my dad owned and developed Virginia International Raceway, amateur racer, SVRA, racing Elva Couriers and coupes and things like that. And I was always actually also New Jersey Motorsport Park, just to give them a shout out as well.
Yes.
So he, and if you're a motorcycle guy, definitely
really learned to ride, actually.
Yeah. I
went to some California superbike schools there with BMW.
Mm-hmm.
And, Nate taught me how to ride a bike. And I knew how to ride, but he taught me how to really ride.
Right.
And then I learned, I was drifting Lamborghinis there. I went to a Lamborghini driving school there as well. So I love New Jersey Motorsport
that track
Park.
is terrific. And I think Virginia VIR was always one that, even growing up was kind of dear to us as the kids of Harvey Siegel, my father, because it's also idyllic, right? It's like on this incredible plot of land. It has a historic import for the community, but also for racing history, and it's got this incredible course that has wonderful elevations and S's, and then there's this big tree that's kind of iconic to the to the track. And so my father really relished and just painstakingly just walked that track and refurbished it with a lot of love. And and since then it's become something really special. And Connie, actually, his partner in it now runs it, a woman, which is very cool. And I think that there's just something special about that space. He built all these really cool lodges on the track, so that if you go to stay there, you can really hear and smell.
I know it kind of kicked off a wave of that, I think.
Yes.
And it's also kind of an iconic circuit in its own right?
Yeah.
Historic VIR. A lot of racing aficionados will know from old stories. But that is so awesome. I'm going to scratch. One question I had, Hannah, was how did she, get into cars growing up as a city girl? Because I know you grew up in Manhattan, but I guess having VIR may have helped.
I also will say this. My father, Harvey Siegel, he's a great guy, as a dad, great, but really hard to kind of It wasn't like he knows all the names of my teachers or anything like that because he spoke cars, you know. And so if you want to connect with Harvey Siegel, you need to be able to speak cars. And so he would take me to the Javits Center, you know, the automotive show. And
New York Car Show.
Yeah, early on. And this was the one place where Dad would sort of open up and tell you stories, or the cars became the thing that would be the connective tissue in our bond, right? So, yeah, I mean, he had 3 daughters and a son. And the son, my brother Luke was the one who ended up, racing a bit. And, of course, you know, it was interesting having the daughters be kind of on the sidelines of the experience. I'll get into that later.
Interesting. You think it was like a sexist thing, or? That would make sense.
Yeah, it was, yes. He grew up within... You know, he's 89 years old. Okay, so that gives you...
Different generation.
Generationally, he's not thinking, oh, my daughters will also be taking on the motorsport, you know, angle. I remember when I first I did a car column for the Hollywood Reporter for a year and a half or so. And it was so fun. And I remember thinking, oh, God, I cannot wait to show my dad this. This is going to be so great. And I think the first one was like a Maserati Gran Turismo or something. I don't know what it was. It was maybe a Maserati. Anyway, so then I said, Dad, read this car column. Like, this is the first one, his first installment. And, you know, he read it and he was so confused. He was like, who wrote this?
Wow.
Oh, no.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And now we've grown a lot since then. I will give him credit.
Wow.
But it just was so...
Yeah.
He was like, what? Like, the blind spot of... Yeah, I was listening all of those years, you know, at the Javits Center. Whilst he thought he was... you know, doing a lecture versus like a conversation, you know. And I think that's just a generation. I do think it's generational.
Well, Hannah, you're in the same generation, essentially, right? I mean, have you, because now it's much better, right? I go to races and we seek out the women who are riding motorcycles, like in Moto3.
Well, it's very cool.
It's awesome. And obviously I have, this is such a, I hate when men say this, but I have daughters, you know, so I want the future to be, you know, oily and dirty for them as well. But
I think it's about inviting. I think that the key here is, you know, you have daughters. Okay. So next up, it's like there's a lot of sort of systemic kind of shit that we're not even paying attention to, where, you know, there's an assumption that my dad was like, well, you know, it's not like his fault. He's just operating within the system, right? Mm-hmm. But I will say there were people around me, male figures, who would, of course, invited us to the party. But it just, I don't know, it wasn't natural to him. And so I would say he would see other women out on the, you know, because I remember there was a mini circuit. And I fell in love with minis really young, like, you know, because if you're a kid and you're on a racetrack, you're like, those are cute, you know, like minis had such a great personality. And I think that was my, you know, as a very, very young girl, I thought those were terrific. Anyway, a lot of female racers in that circuit for whatever reason. And they were always really talented. And Dad would say, oh, you know, the female racers are great because they're, you know, he would kind of glob us into one section and say that, that women have an access to fear that allows them to be faster because they're thinking. This was
your dad's theory?
Yeah, he was like, yeah, you know, they're more afraid. And I was like, meanwhile, I know.
Interesting.
Listen, he's difficult. It's a difficult figure. Listen, I'm being very honest and transparent.
Yeah.
I'm
You're like, get in trouble with your dad again later.
Well, he's 89, honey, so, you know, he's not listening to podcasts. And the truth is I think I'm at a place in my life where I'm like, I'm just going to speak candidly.
Yeah.
Because you know, I wrote a movie in a world, right? That is about father-daughter competition because I thought it was really interesting.
That's like compelling. My favorite part of it. I absolutely love that relationship and that dynamic in the script. It's so cool.
That only exists because my dad is like, has some blind spots. You know, the ego infects all of us, right? Like there's no getting out of it in the human condition. And we all have it. And you know, my father is guilty of it. I'm guilty of it. We're all guilty of it. I just feel that it's very important to allow for there to be some, you know, generosity in the fact that he is an old man at this point and he lived in a different time. And so I don't harbor much resentment at this juncture. I don't. I think it's compelling as a, you know, a story point in my own narrative as a woman, but my relationship and love of everything automobile is attributed to what he educated me with. So I feel grateful.
That's awesome that you can.
Yeah.
Do you feel like the appreciation for cars is yours? And at what point did it stop being just, I'm trying to relate to my dad? And at what point did it become, I'm actually genuinely interested?
This is such a good question, because I did often think, is this mine? Or is this dad's?
Yeah.
Is this, I remember being terrified to drive stick. I thought other people are just, on farms in the middle of nowhere, 14-year-olds are just jumping in a tractor and driving stick. And there was no kind of heaviness around it for me and my family. In my family, it's like, you better know how to double clutch and I was like, what? It seemed so intimidating. There was so much ego and rite of passage. I felt like, that's not my thing. It's not my thing. And then eventually my dad put me in a King of the Road 500. Shelby
There you
Cobra.
go. That'll do it.
And he said, and this makes him sound awesome, which it was, like, this is where he shines, right? He was great at teaching stick, because he would just put you in a car that had so much torque that no matter what,
yes.
no matter what gear you're in, you're going to move, But I remember first putting in this KR and just be like, back and forth. And then finally, feeling that magic flow of gears, and that was mine. That didn't feel like something my dad was. I mean, certainly he inspired the interest, but then it's like you get there, and I have kids too, so I think about this, and you want to expose your children to as many different wondrous options in the world and things to be interested in and modalities and all this stuff. And then they will glob on to what works for them.
The way you describe it makes me want to go outside and jump into a classic car with a stick. I mean, that's...
Matt.
Hannah, what's your experience like, Hannah? I mean, when did you realize it was your thing about cars and not, I don't know.
I always had sort of an easy answer, which is I always rejected cars in a way. I would always say, I'm not a car person. I'm not a car person. I write about cars because they're my beat. I'm a journalist. So I think I had it a lot easier than Lake, because my dad is a sports guy and doesn't know a thing about cars. My family is not a car family. So I didn't have any pressure whatsoever. And yeah, you could say that was also no guidance, but actually it was very freeing, because I didn't have anybody pressuring me to be any which way. So I sort of took the exit route and just said straight up, I'm not a car person. I'm a journalist who happens to write about cars. And I think that actually freed me from a lot of stress.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, because I will say, after the King of the Road 500 experience, that was just a little tickle in the brain. Because I went off and then, of course, tried to get into any other car, and I screwed it up. I wasn't fluid, But then I didn't tell my father, I didn't tell my brother, because my big brother, also being a person that I'd call and say, like, the car is making a weird sound. Can I ask you what that is? He was my guy for that, as opposed to calling my dad, because it was too fraught. It was like too much, too heavy. So... like, I should know better, So anyway, when I ended up going to LA and buying myself a car, I found a guy who was selling a Mini Cooper. It was a short shift, lowered. By the way, why lower a Mini? Anyway, I bought it from, apparently, a bandmate from Devo.
Nice.
So pretty cool.
Good.
I know. I whipped it good. I went over to like La Cañada or whatever and picked up my Mini.
How much did it cost? And you remember?
How dare you?
I mean,
but I can't remember what it cost. But it was like a 2000, 2 or something. I don't even know.
Used Mini.
Used Mini. Oh yeah, Mama was.
So you
just
got into those. You mentioned already from VIR, right? So
Yes. So it was like harken back. And also in England, I had a D-Reg Mini in 1987. But by the way, not a stick. So it was basically like like a golf cart. But anyway, so finally I go and I buy this car sight unseen. And it is a short, it's, manual. And I get there and the guy's like, you know how to drive a stick, right? And I was like, I mean,
How hard
and he's
be?
like, "Do you want a tutorial in the parking lot?" And I was like, "This man who I don't know, who's not my father." I sit there and I just ask all the questions that I need. There's no pressure. Yeah. And I drove it off onto the highway and into my life. And that was how I really, really, really learned how to drive stick. And now obviously I have Janet. Do you want to talk about Janet?
Yeah, I do. Well, that's exactly what I wanted to talk about, really, was what, the significant cars in your life. People always ask, like, your first car, your favorite car, but I think just give us a handful of the... But I want to ask Hannah first, before we get to that, and I don't want to interview you instead of Lake, but I think of you as a car person. Has that changed?
I mean, I would say in probably reality... Yes, I am a car person by now, simply because I appreciate beautiful things and I own a couple old cars and I'm around them. I'm immersed in them constantly and I can speak the language and I love my job. So yes, I would say, I'm tentatively a car person, but I that was never something I aspired toward. And I don't like how it's used as a litmus test. Especially for men, I see men sizing each other up based on whether or not they're a car guy or how much of a car guy they are. And I'm like, that actually means nothing. That has no meaning at all. And, it's very freeing to just remove yourself. Yeah. I can see how, if I had grown up with a dad like Lake's dad, I would have run as far as I could in the other direction, probably because it's so, it does feel... So it would feel very fraught. Yeah.
But what's interesting is like we both now find ourselves in a similar position.
So, and then we meet. Yeah.
And also I wasn't trying to be a car guy. You know what I'm saying? Like, so
Sure.
In a way I could appreciate it from afar. I realized that was the only way to connect. And so, I knew exactly what I wanted to do from age 4. So I was like, I'm going to be telling stories through acting, directing, and writing. I just knew that's what I was going to do. So I didn't feel the competitive, like I have to try to
I will say, I don't think it's so much competitive. Like, I'm not sizing another person up as a car.
You're a gentle giant, Matt.
I just want to soak up the info. So, like, if I meet a guy, like my birthday party for my daughter's friend or whatever, and he doesn't want to talk about cars, or a woman who doesn't care, I just move on to the next person.
Some people, that's really beautiful about you, but some people aren't able to do that. And, there are some people who are really only able to talk about cars. And I think it's interesting because Lake has created her own life and her own identity completely separate from cars. And maybe that is what freed you to return to them on your own terms.
Potentially. I do think that, being, comfortable and established in the thing that I do, my heart, my soul, my cellular level obsession of creating story, I'm living my dream, and so I get to be a parent. I get to enjoy cars at this point. Also being divorced, it's like, when we talk about, I love my ex-husband. We're like really good friends, and so.
But you get more time to work on Janet.
Yeah. Actually,
what is Janet? Tell me about Janet.
Because
I assume it's not your driver, right? It's probably your daily driver.
Janet's not even my daily driver, but she's my girlfriend. Janet is a 1979 Z28 T-top Camaro. There is a little bit of there's a little bit of rebellion in it because she's a Chevy and my dad is a Ford guy. So it's like, what American classic am I going to get? And there was definitely, I think of cars as something where I'm going to have a rapport with Janet. And before that, I had my 1988 Land Cruiser, which was like when my kids were really, really small. And it was you'll get there when you get there kind of thing.
That's
and,
cool.
There's no radio. Like, we'll sing our own songs. We're going to inhale fumes. And like, this is your childhood. But then, Janet, school drop-offs are a little different. I got a Bluetooth in there. We're going to be listening to, Earth, Wind, and Fire. And
Where did her name come from?
Janet?
Yeah.
Oh, it just comes to you, doesn't it?
This doesn't have any meaning other than it felt right.
It just felt right. Yeah, I think your cars, I always name my cars, I've got an electric car to kind of offset Janet.
Wait,
I did. Yeah.
I think we were talking about this.
Yeah, because I heard about
potentially.
this on, I was listening to you on Tig Notaro's podcast, and you were saying, like, you have this Camaro, but you kind of feel guilty because you're in LA and you should be getting an electric vehicle. You said you were testing out a few, so I wanted to ask
I am.
what you tested and what you got.
Yes, I did test out a few. I will be very open with saying that it's not just because I live in LA. It matches my values. I think that, Janet is not my daily driver because we just, the world is evolving and I evolve my taste in cars and how I'm going to interact with them on a weekly, daily basis differently, So I do think that it is the responsible thing for me to have an electric car, especially because LA is a bunch of highways strung together.
But did you get one that's fun? I mean, do you get one that you like?
I did. I test drove. I had the Tesla, and because the values of the person who runs that company does not align with mine, I actually broke my lease and got out of the Tesla because I was like, you know what? I did it.
I've been waiting to hear someone say that.
I
can't believe I haven't heard someone say it yet. I mean, obviously,
I have a lot of
people
friends who left.
A lot of people in LA.
I get it. It's a great car. Oh, it's so good, isn't it? Oh, wow, it's so sexy and fun and cool. But that's just not
There
who
are
I
many
am.
other options.
There are so many of them. I test drove the Lucid. I thought it was very sexy.
Yeah, I've heard amazing things about.
If you
that's
wanna
another one that you kind of have to
feel-
separate the product from the company because the company seems like, a dumpster fire and.
Well, I think that, even the Ioniq Q,
completely amazing.
That's so
Great
good.
product.
There are
Yes.
options. Yeah. Obviously, if you want a little status, a little, yuck, you're going to go Lucid, you're going to go Rivian, you're going to, you want to pull up to, yeah, exactly. But I think the Ioniq Q, I think I have the i4, which is the BMW, which,
now you're speaking
by the
my
way,
language.
yeah, it's really just, I liked the Prius. I looked into the Prius, but then I ended up going with the i4 ultimately for my daily driver. It's so easy.
I have to say,
fluid.
I'm in love with BMW's electric vehicles, and I'm not really
They're good.
that into
They're very
electric
good.
vehicles.
Yeah.
but
They're very good.
I drove the i5 for a week, and it was amazing.
I thought about the i5. Yeah,
and the iX, I love the iX,
yes,
even
the
though,
iX is
or
cool,
maybe
yeah.
because it's so ugly.
Well, you know what?
Ugly
I think
cute.
Yeah, there's something about when you're driving an electric vehicle, everyone's just allowing a little more movement in the design and the shape. They're like, hey, we're going to be a little weird, a little ugly, little like cute, or I like that it's a little more expressive and there's some risk taking. I think people should double down with that in the electric space. I'm like,
For
just
sure.
just it's electric.
Yeah.
We're in the future. I mean, definitely the Cybertruck did that, but that's in my neighborhood now, and I'm like, I literally stopped and just looked at it. I was like,
You would look amazing in a Cybertruck.
But
let's just be honest.
I definitely want other companies to take chances and
It's so cool that they did, right? I don't even
It is
care
I
if
agree
you-
with
if
that.
you think
I
they
agree with
hit
that.
or missed. It's awesome. I was looking at an
I
old
agree.
1950s Chrysler recently on Bring a Trailer, and it had massive fins in the back,
Yeah.
And I thought, who designed this?
Yeah.
I know.
Congratulations, that's awesome.
Like, do you feel like you're treated differently? Like, if you drive something to set, are you received differently if you're in an EV versus a Camaro or some such?
Yeah, I mean, when I want to find out, I drive Janet to set. You know what I mean?
I support that.
But
I want to hear
think
more about Janet, to be honest.
Janet, she's all toffee, first of all, caramel inside and out. Okay, so when you're picturing her color, you're picturing two-tone toffee, all right?
Yeah.
It's all
Tasty.
tan. Yeah,
Those
she
70s.
is. Oh my God, she's so gorgeous. People don't even. I mean, you're driving the experiential, just journey of driving Janet down to the shops or whatever, or for. By the way, school drop off.
Do your kids understand? Do they get that this is a cool car? Or,
They do. I let them know.
Good.
And they feel it. Like, when we're driving in the highway or something and I go, oh, check that out. That's an Alfa Romeo. Like, let me tell you a little bit about that. Like, oh, isn't that great? You see the shapes? Isn't that a different shape? What do you notice in the way that car looks to the car next to it? Tell me about it. And there is, even in the color palettes, it's like, oh, the way that, the type of, an alpha green is going to look very different than, like, I don't know, a green, Subaru, there's something interesting even in palette, but then shapes. And we do have a couple of Chrysler and Cadillacs that come through our neighborhood. I've got a good neighborhood for this, where I get a lot of people have, classic cars and they drive them on a Sunday. And so we get to sit on the stoop and really kind of enjoy that.
I have another question about EVs versus combustion engines, though. And I'm asking because you are so in tune with sounds and with
this is the
your voice work, of course, but also
the voice
sounds,
of the car.
I feel like. Right. So, tell me about just growing up, being around your dad at the track, what those sounds meant to you then, but also now EV versus Janet.
It's a mournful thing because I do, sound design in my life is so important. And the sound of particularly that KR and any Shelby Cobra or anything, you just, blah, 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 blah. I mean, that sound and the smell is so visceral. I think that for my children, I like reminding them, again, getting them in tune with, it helps me too, just kind of let's enjoy the sound of that. Or if you hear a really, someone with headers or something, you go by, and tell me, my kids are like, oh my gosh, it's so loud. I'm like, I know, right? So that's really telling you something about how this person has built their engine and
loud good or
what
loud
they want.
bad?
Yeah. But yeah, I think not having that in the electric car is, honestly, it's a sign of evolution. We're just moving with the times. I do love music, so in a way, I'm like, all right, I'm going to jam that music and really feel
energized.
Yeah, it's just a different experience, but it feels like we are so lucky and have the privilege to evolve as as a species, but also as just a society. And so, our planet needs us to embrace electric vehicles. And I can be an automotive enthusiast and still, drive electric.
I love some of the fake sounds, and this is something I think
that's
Hannah
my next
disagrees with
question.
on me.
How do you feel about
I
the
like
synthetics?
I think Hans Zimmer does the sounds for BMW. The EQS that I drove sounds amazing.
Really?
The Dodge has got this echo chamber that's just going to amplify the sounds of the electric motor. It's different, right? It's not the same, obviously, as a choppy cam on a big V8, but it's different. It's cool.
You don't have it on yours.
I don't have it on the i4. We don't have. It's like
you can turn it off.
Yeah.
So you probably have turned
maybe
it
it's
off and you've never
deactivated.
turned it on. Yeah.
But you obviously don't miss it. It's not like you've been wondering.
I'm not trying. It's like that thing of when you're eating vegan food, don't give me a fake steak. You know what I'm saying? Either give me a steak or give me a great butternut squash soup. You know what I mean?
Yes.
That's vegan. So I think it's a little bit of that for me. I'm like, I'm in an electric car. You're not going to fool me, okay? And the torque, the experience, everything about it is going to feel electric. So,
I think that's sensible.
Yeah, me too.
I do.
But the creativity of, first of all, I'm never going to push Hans Zimmer sounds out of bed. But the point is, I think it's very cool that there are versions of that, if that's, appealing. All of that stuff, it's all experimental. It's exciting. It's modern. It's like, how can we play with this new automotive medium? So it's cool.
It's good we got a creative, Hannah, on the podcast.
I know.
You know?
I know.
I love it. I love
know.
the creative energy. I totally agree. But I can't get as excited about an electric vehicle for the most part as I can about your Camaro. Like, if I think of the lopey idle sound, I just want to hear that. But it's maybe a different thing.
Well, here's I'm not a speed queen. So for instance, my Camaro is like a 305. Like, I'm not like jamming down the highway like a maniac, and I'm not getting tickets, If anything, I'm getting tickets for like your headlight is out. Yes. But it's really interesting. I quite like a cruise, because of that thing you just said, which is like, it's about the sound, the smell, the cruise. I'm like, windows down.
That's exactly how it is with my Corvette, the C3.
Yeah.
77. It's slow. It's a terrible driving car, but I love it because it has personality and it's just a thing. It's just interesting to do. And it feels like you're doing a thing that is really nice. It's not about getting anywhere fast, and it reflects a personality, and it's just not boring. And I feel like, a lot of the times electric vehicles can tend to be appliances, which is fine, but it's nice to have different tools for different purposes.
And it's a meditation.
Completely.
So when we're so utility when we drive our electric vehicles or our modern vehicles. And when we get into our classic car, we are making, we're having a conversation with an art piece,
1977.
Yeah, with 1977, and you're gonna have to kind of juice it a little bit to get it on. You're gonna have to, because like for mine revs really high. She like when you first turn it on, it's like, and I'm like, I have to blip her, and then, she has like, and I love all of her quirks because it's. I'm not thinking about work. I'm not thinking about whatever this guy said to me that blah, blah, blah. It's just everything's it's a full meditation. I've arrived at driving Janet. And
it's a relationship.
It's a relationship. And that's a meditation, seconds feels better today,
I hope we can get a photo, Hannah, and you can tweet it out.
I
would
we
love
can
to
share
see
that.
Janet, are there any other, I looked back at some of your columns, Hannah sent some links, and I saw, for example, you reviewed the Mercedes SLS AMG, which is a gorgeous car. Is there anything that you look at in the street and you say, like, I really would like to get one of those? Like that.
That's a
really,
good question.
It's a great question. There's a lot of cars that I'm just like, oh, that's a turn on. Well, hello.
Let's put it this way: if someone was taking you out on a date, what car would you like to have them show up in? Maybe
or her. The night is young.
Have them show up in.
I think if they showed up in like a Lamborghini Miura.
Oh, that's very cool.
I would be like, I'm sorry. What is going on? I have been taken out on a date on a 246 Dino Spider. That was great.
Wow.
That was great.
That's a statement.
Yeah, it's a statement, and it's like that's not a super easy drive, So it's really saying, I got a handle on this. But confidence. The Miura too. That's like
very cool.
Yeah, that would be great. Or like even a Pantera, Detomazzo. I think a 1970s like Italian car.
Oh yeah, you can't go wrong. Just showing up in one of those cars and proving that it runs and you've got it running and you trust it enough to have it around town for an evening, that shows real confidence, and women like confidence.
Yeah, any car that you don't want to give to valet to park.
Basically, like European muscle. Like
I do. I like it. I do. I think that, I'm not super impressed with like a brand new. I have nothing against the G-Wagon, but that's not gonna.
I hear you. We like it.
I dated a guy with the G-Wagon, and it was, thank God I loved him. You know what I mean? Because I was like, I got nothing against this, So it does prove that you can, I'm not like dissing the G-Wagon. The G-Wagon is a beautiful car. It's just that, unfortunately, certain cars can start to like glean some of these.
Yes,
like,
it's so sad.
Annoying.
You're right about the G-Wagon 100%.
Yeah,
and
but it's a
my wife
great
got
car.
one in 2020 in Berlin. And,
In Berlin.
she's
In
not a
Berlin.
pretentious
That's very cool.
person.
Yeah, exactly.
But it definitely makes a statement no matter what when you're driving
You know what?
around.
I also like a resto mod. This is controversial. I'm interested in, because I like a classic shape, but I'm also willing to evolve with the times. And so when I see I've stopped people to be like, is that, like seeing an electric, old Cadillac or something. I think there's something kind of cool, and I think this is a part of the rebellion of my dad again, where there's just everything has to be exactly classic.
Period correct.
Yeah, period correct. Like there's something kind of rebellious about saying, well, what if it worked and you could drive it?
Imagine.
Can you imagine?
I think it's the best. I mean, I don't want drum brakes. I love a classic shape. I love a classic sound. I don't want drum brakes. I don't want to reduce the amount of safety that I can experience. Hannah, I don't even know your take on resto mods. I love them.
I am not in theory opposed to resto mods. My problem is I've driven many of them that are just really shoddily built.
That's nice.
And it's the type of thing where the people who build them sort of expect to get a pass on craftsmanship because, we've done all of this stuff. And it's like, well, yeah, but you still need to make sure body panels align and, the interior doesn't come off when I pull it. So in theory, I love the idea of a resto mod. And I actually do. I can see, especially if you're a parent, you need something that is reliable. You just do. It's not cool when your car breaks down and you have two kids in the back. It's hardly cool when a car breaks down for me, but I can survive because it's just me. When you have kids, it's kind of a different thing.
I mean, my brakes were like, my brake pad got screwy,
I
and
understand.
I was like, oh,
there are
God,
other considerations, especially when you have other young children involved.
I think the resto mods, if you go full fat resto mod like Icon or Singer or Revology, then you're going to be fine. But it's just very expensive, ridiculously expensive.
Honestly, it's too expensive. Yeah, that's the only reason why I don't have one in my collection. But, maybe one day when I make money. But the point is, I think that there is a sense of creativity in a resto mod. So it does, unfortunately, you've had experiences, I guess, Hannah, where it's just instead of creativity, they're just cutting corners. They should get an award for just making it work. But I think when you see really beautiful creative choices and craftsmanship going into the resto mod, it can be really kind of like a real conversation between old and new.
Yeah, I like that. Lake, tell me about what you're working on now that we should be sure to watch for in the coming weeks and months.
Well, I've been in the independent film circuit in this past year or so and continuing that. So I just finished a movie with Ewan McGregor called Mother Couch. Not sure when that's coming out, but it shall.
Love him. Motorcycle guy.
Yeah. Love talking to him about and car. He's got a couple of cool
cars.
Classics. Yeah, but it's a different era that, he goes real old. But he's an aficionado for sure.
Cool.
Yeah. Anyway, so that will be coming out.
What's that called?
Mother Couch.
Mother
Ellen
Couch.
Burstyn's in it. It's really very, very cool.
Can you give us the 2-minute trailer?
Okay. So this filmmaker is so cool, Nicholas Larson. Basically, it's it's a group of kids. I'm actually Ewan's wife in it, but these adult children have a very sort of curmudgeonly mother who goes to a furniture shop to purchase something, and then she sits on a couch and she won't move. And they can't get her off. And you're like, what?
I get it.
But it's mystical and strange and wonderful and like a character piece. And Taylor Russell's in it as well. She's fantastic. So it's just this kind of beautiful, poetic, hilarious, heartbreaking story about this very simple conceit. So
Wait, did you do it in Scotland? Did you film it in Scotland?
No, we shot it in like North Carolina or something.
Well, North Carolina is cool too for driving because I was just like,
hey,
when you work
Carolina.
with somebody like Ewan McGregor, obviously famous for motorcycles. When you work with somebody like Dak Shepard, who obviously is obsessed with muscle and cars.
There's a funny story about that actually.
I want to hear it.
We in our show. Obviously, I was
Bless
friends
This
with
Mess.
him. Bless This Mess, a show that I created and
Applause.
starred. Thank you. And
I
Dax,
tuned in for the first episode, I will tell you. I started watching it right away.
and never
I
watched it again.
No. I was looking forward with anticipation to it, is what I meant. Because
I know. Well, it's funny because we drive a Leaf in it, and for us, both Dax and I, being like motorheads, it was like quite funny that we've put ourselves in a Leaf. He's like, God damn it. So no shade on the Leaf, but actually a little shade on the Leaf. Okay,
It's the
Is that
Pioneer.
it?
The Leaf.
It's
I will
fine.
shade
I
it.
like it.
It looks
I like
horrid.
it, but
I don't like it.
We could work on the design. Is
It's
all we're saying. Okay.
Disgusting.
So there's a lot of Leaf talk in the show, but anyway, so his character eventually gets a truck, and like a real American truck, and there's this one scene where we're like, it's as if something's awakened in his character, and he starts, and there was like, he's going to go into a field and really, go for it and do donuts and all this stuff. And of course, Dax is chomping at the bit, and I know, I know him so well. I know what we're doing. I know what's going on in his head. And, they're like, production is like, should we get a stunt driver? And I was like, guys, you're just going to have to let him do it. Okay?
I'm trying to Google to see what truck, because I know he's a Chevy guy.
I know, but I'm not sure if it was before. I can't remember. But anyway, so you're going to tell us. He got in there, and I was like, the hardest part was for me to pretend that I was scared while he did absolute madness, jumps, and he was really going for it. And it was kind of a great day on set. Of course, production was like just flop sweating. But I had to be like, and like kind of scared. But of course I was like, I'm a grown woman. It's like, I know how to, like, I'll drive, but of course, my ego and my like puffed up kind of, between us, we both are kind of like alpha and a little bit as people. So we both were kind of like, but I fought for him as to get to do it himself.
Well, I just wonder, like, you work with, and you're surrounded by all these, people in your films and in your shows that are also car people. And Rob Corddry was on Top Gear America with Dax, right?
Yeah.
So do you guys just sit around
and
I've just researched you and saw that he married you, for example. So you're close, right?
What? Oh yeah, he married me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. I was
he
like,
officiated.
What? Yes,
at your
he
wedding.
did.
So,
Corddry is a very, very dear friend of mine.
So do you guys all sit around and talk cars, or is it about like acting and families now?
I definitely was friends with Corddry before his awakening that we've all talked about. We've had these awakenings. So I got to kind of know him before, and then and see that awakening occur. He always like was interested, but then really like now he's just, he's bitten by the bug,
nice.
Obviously. But I think we gravitate towards each other, I suppose. And I will say this, I want to plug, even though it does not even have purchase yet. I wrote a movie called Baja Black Sheep about the Baja 1000. And
Sweet. Amazing.
It is a female-driven, pun intended, movie about, I could have create this this sort of mythology of a female racing team. That is...
What's its status?
Its status is I'm looking for suitors to help financial aid. I'm raising money to make
I
it.
want to watch that movie.
I want to watch that movie, girl. I'm serious.
So
Matt wants to watch that movie.
There are
His daughter
so
wanna
many
watch it.
people,
100%.
there are so many people who would jump on watching that.
And
That
it's universal, guys.
Yeah.
Everybody loves a racing movie. Nobody gets to see a lady do it. I'm like, if anyone is going to do it, it's going to be Lake Mel.
Yes. Let's make this happen. Get this out to all Bloomberg subscribers.
I'm already there. I
and
already
listener.
have tickets to the Alamo.
Yeah.
Do you guys have Alamos there?
Baby, it's gonna be. We gotta go bigger. We gotta go AMC. We gotta go Lemley. We're gonna do Alamo too, but we gotta go big.
Okay, cool.
I'm there.
IMAX.
Cool. Well, listen, it's been such a pleasure having you in the studio and joining us. Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks.
Yeah, I have to say, Lake really is one of the most genuine people I have ever met, let alone in Hollywood. I mean, we know what people think about Hollywood, but Lake is truly genuine, kind, the best hostess I have ever seen. Truly, she's a wonder to behold. I don't know how you do it, but she truly is one of the most fascinating and kind people I have ever met. It's truly genuine, and it's such a treat to have you.
I will say, I was researching, your work, like, for this, and when someone younger than you like achieves so much at such a young age, and you're like, how in the hell did they do that? Was the kind of vibe I was getting. Like, you just must do so much work.
If you met her, you would know how she does it. It's coming out of her pores.
I do appreciate it. I feel, I genuinely feel very privileged and to age, to evolve. That is like my North Star. I feel I've experienced a lot of things in my life with my children where I've almost lost both of them in different ways. So I think that allows me to be very measured and to, move through life with a sense of perspective and gratitude.
Well, thank you so much for joining us.
I'm not saying anything after that.
Thanks, guys.
Hannah, that's all we got for this week. We'll be back with more next week.
I can't wait. Email us at hotpursuit@bloomberg.net. We love all of your emails, and we do respond to them. Give us a day or two, but we promise we will respond. Thank you for all of your comments and feedback.
I'm Matt Miller.
I'm Hannah Elliott, and this is Bloomberg.